Well, it's time to say goodbye to Ginger Baker, one of the great rock drummers of all time. So influential, so important. Probably the first great rock drummer I ever really focused on as an artist who was a soloist and had a real musical sense. This is, of course, Cream and Jack Bruce and Eric Clapton. This is their first record, Fresh Cream. And let's go back in time and talk a little bit about what this group has meant to me and who they were and what kind of men they were and the effect that they had on rock music. Uh, Ginger Baker was born Paul Baker on August 19th, 1939, and at 15 years old, he started playing drums, and he was immediately attracted to jazz, and that was really his upbringing was jazz, and that maybe explains how his skills were so strong, and he wasn't playing a 4/4 beat, and he did a lot of fills, and he made the drums like music. He tuned them. And as strong and as great as like Charlie Watts's and Ringo, this is a different style. He joined a group called Blues Incorporated, and it's there that he met this guy, Jack Bruce. And from almost the first moment that they met each other, they hated each other. They didn't get along. And the Blues Incorporated were a very popular group that preceded the Stones and were playing around London. And sure enough, the fighting got too much, and Jack Bruce said, "I can't work with him anymore." And so the rhythms section was torn asunder, and Jack Bruce left. Now, Jack Bruce then went on to join a group called Manfred Mann, which you might have heard of. And the first thing he plays on is a song. It's a terrific Manfred Mann song called "Pretty Flamingo." All right. So let's find out more about why I bought this record. Now, this is not the one I bought originally. This is the English version. So let's go back and examine why I went into a record store in 1967 and bought this album from a group I'd never really heard much about called Cream. So we have to go back to high school. We have to go back to June of 1966. Elektra Records, which was one of the great labels for folk music, had this thing where they would make samplers. They would put together all their artists on one record. Each one would have one song, and they'd sell it to you for 50 cents. Now, the average album then was like $3, maybe $2, $3 and $4, and this was their electric sampler and called "What's Shakin'" and featured the Lovin' Spoonfuls. Now they were not on Elektra. They had recorded on Elektra a bunch of songs, and Elektra couldn't sign them. They went to a more commercial bubblegum label called Kama Sutra, and I'm sure they rue the day, but they had a ton of hits. They were big stars. And also on this is the Paul Butterfield Blues Band, which you've heard me talk about, are very important. This is the first time I ever heard Paul Butterfield, and a group called Eric Clapton and the Powerhouse. Now, I had no idea who they were, but they were rocking. They did songs like "Steppin' Out," which was an instrumental, "Spoonful," "Off the Wall," and their bass player was none other than Jack Bruce, the guy from Blues Incorporated, and the keyboard player was a young kid called Steve Winwood. Now, this was just an interim group because Eric Clapton had his sights. He had left the Yardbirds, and he had sights on a more blues approach. Now, as time went on with him, time went on with me, and I went to Franklin and Marshall College in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and joined the radio station as a DJ. And I must say, I was a damn good DJ. I had the Friday afternoon show from 4 in the afternoon till midnight because I had nothing else to do but play my records on the air. And about every 2 or 3 weeks, a box of records would arrive, and there'd be a big battle over what was inside the box and who would get them. And I remember on this one day, the big fight was over the soundtrack to Thoroughly Modern Millie. Okay, so that's the taste of these guys. The Mancini records went first. A lot of fights over Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass, that kind of stuff. And in the midst of all these guys walking out with these records to play them in their rooms, there was a record that I knew the name on. It was this record. John Mayall and the Blues Breakers with Eric Clapton. John Mayall and the Blues Breakers with Eric Clapton. This is the real shit, okay? this is one of the great guitar records of all time, and it's certainly important because it's one of the earliest. Eric Clapton's work on this is what established him as one of the key guitar players. He got the name Slow Hand from the way he played on this, and he played Steppin' Out Again, All Your Love, I've Got Ramblin', and I took this back to my room, and I never returned it. This is the original one. So Clapton was implanted on my in my mind on a great record, and it was right after Christmas vacation. We were record shopping in New York, and I bought this. Now, this is the first Cream album. This is the American version with slightly different songs, and it came out in January of 1967. And the lead-off song, which was not even on the other record, was their single "I Feel Free." Now, it was produced by their manager, whose name was Robert Stigwood. And Robert Stigwood would go on to be the manager of the Bee Gees and to produce Saturday Night Fever and lots of other stuff in Grease and things. But he was a great businessman, but he was a crappy producer. This has a muffled sound, and at that point, you had to pay $3 for mono and $4 for stereo. And let me tell you, when it came to stereo, you really got your money's worth, because there's a guitar over there, and there's a vocal over there, and the drums, God knows where they came from. It's kind of a shitty mix, and doesn't do justice to the band, but that was kind of the style for the people just starting out. And Ahmet Ertegun had signed Eric Clapton to this record and signed Cream. And how that happened was, now Ahmet Ertegun's the head of Atlantic Records, and he had great artists. They had Wilson Pickett, they had all the Stax Volt people, they had Ruth Brown, Ray Charles, everyone, and he was in England on a Wilson Pickett tour. And he's in this bar, and the song is over, and all these people, I think it was called The Bag of Nails, and everyone's jamming on the stage, and he got his back to the bar, and Ahmet Ertegun has got the best ears in, Atlantic Records is the greatest label ever. Led Zeppelin were on it as well. Phil Collins, just great label. And he hears this guy wailing, and so he turns to Wilson Pickett, and he says, "Man, Wilson, your guitar player is just killing it." And Wilson goes, "That ain't my guitar player." And he turns around, and he sees this white guy on the stand just wailing, and he turns and goes, "Anyone know what this guy's name is?" And somebody says, "Well, that's Eric Clapton." So Ahmet files that away. So when Eric Clapton has got his own group, Cream, that's why they ended up on Atlantic Records in the United States. Now, they toured behind this record, and they did the kind of Murray the K shows with The Who, where they played 6 shows a night, but they went out across the country and played whatever rock halls there were then, and there weren't many, and they played clubs and everything, and they were live. They were very effective, and they got to the Fillmore West. Now, we're talking the Summer of Love. And Cream played 3 nights at the Fillmore West, and tout le monde of San Francisco showed up to see this band. And in the audience for all 3 nights, according to various interviews, is Jerry Garcia of the Dead, as well as Mickey Hart and various other members of the Dead, because this was a band that would improvise live on stage. And they gave the Dead the sense that it was possible that you could do this sort of music and the audience would like it. So the Dead started stretching out, and they were so impressed with the virtuosity of this band that they were really working on their improvisation. Okay, so I saw this band, this version of the Cream, at the Village Theater in September of 1967. And the bill was Richie Havens opened. Remember Richie Havens? Okay. Soul Survivors. You don't remember them. They had one hit, Expressway to Your Heart, and Cream. And let me tell you, they were awesome. The Village Theater was what became eventually the Fillmore East. And they were so intense. The thing about the Power Trio was that the guitar player played the part of both lead guitar and rhythm guitar, and he had to play a lot of guitar, and he did that. Ginger Baker didn't keep a 4/4 beat. He was playing fills and doing all his musical stuff, and the bass player wasn't tied to the rhythm section in the way you would have on, say, a Motown song or most pop music. They were all sort of improvising and playing together at the same time. And that was magical when they were on because the music was so full of notes, and they all played long solos. And I saw for the first time the solo on his big drum solo, which was called Toad. And it's a 20-minute drum solo, and it was very effective. And many, many years later, I did the movie called Get Crazy, and Toad is the name of the drummer in Reggie Wanker's band. And this is what Cream looked like in those days, okay? Ginger Baker is wailing, okay, as you can see in this, and Clapton. And it was the most powerful band I'd ever seen up to that point, and certainly the loudest. And here is Ginger Baker playing Toad. He had 2 bass drums and plenty of toms. He had a lot of variety of sound. But a part of what made this band so special was Jack Bruce. Jack Bruce is the bass player. Here he's got his 4-string Gibson bass. Everyone else was playing a Fender. He was playing a Gibson. And this is a picture of his famous bass. And he also wrote the songs, and with a friend of his named Peter Brown, who wrote the lyrics. Now, over the years, you've probably looked at the back of this record, if you haven't, and wondered why the second song on the first side is called NSU. And I'm here as a public service to tell you what NSU actually stands for. It's nonspecific urethritis, which is a mild form of venereal disease. And that's what the song is about. It's about a love affair, and you end up with the clap, a kind of mild version of the clap. So there you go. Don't say it's not educational. The next record that comes out by Cream vaults them into the stratosphere and pretty much helps invent FM radio. They had a huge impact with Disraeli Gears. Okay, that's their second record. And it's called Disraeli Gears because they were in a van traveling, and Eric Clapton was talking about buying a new racing bike. Now, Eric Clapton is a cyclist, and he said derailleur gears. And the roadie said, "Did you say Disraeli gears, like Disraeli?" Anyway, that's the kind of thing when you're traveling in a band and you're smoking a lot of pot, you think is effective. Anyway, they recorded this in New York. The producer is Felix Pappalardi. Robert Stigwood got the heave-ho, and the engineer is Tom Dowd, and this is a great sounding record. It has in it a song that became their signature song. You know it well. Sunshine of Your Love is on this. Also, Strange Brew, Tales of Brave Ulysses. Incredible wah-wah sound. That was something that Clapton brought, the wah-wah pedal. And the thing is that they were trying to record this song, and it was not going well. No matter what they did, and they were doing it as a blues shuffle, Tom Dowd wasn't happy. Well, they were not happy. Tom Dowd was just the engineer. Now, who is Tom Dowd? Tom Dowd was someone who had worked for Atlantic Records since the late 40s. He was their chief recording engineer. He started out as a scientist and worked on the Alamo project. That's right, the first atomic bomb. He was a worker on that. He was a genius. I think he went to MIT. But he was a nonconformist, and they worried about his security clearance, and he didn't really want to be in that kind of regimented situation. So he left and went into recording engineering and built his own 8-track machine and got hired by Atlantic. He built a 4-track, and he was their engineer on the Ray Charles stuff, Ruth Brown, the Drifters, the Coasters, all the great hits they had. And he was sent down to Stax Volt in Memphis and redid their recording studio. And the sound of Atlantic Records is intimately involved with Tom Dowd's taste. And if you are a music geek like me, you would love this documentary. It's called Tom Dowd and the Language of Music, and he explains his theories on music, and he goes through and tells some pretty good stories about how records ended up sounding the way they do, okay? So he's saying that this song, the beat's not working, and Tom Dowd says maybe it should sound more like Indian tom-tom drums. He's telling the best drummer in rock at that moment, Ginger Baker, how to play drums. Listen. Now, engineers didn't have opinions in those days. And he was right. And they changed the beat into what you have here. And the song goes to number 4 on the charts, all right? It's a big hit. And Tom Dowd later went on to produce records. He produced Layla for Eric Clapton. He produced the Allman Brothers live at the Fillmore East. And major artist with a great career. And I think you'd enjoy that documentary. But at that point, Cream were like everywhere, and they went totally psychedelic. And that's the guitar that he played. Now, you're probably wondering why this is not a LP. It's just a printout of the album cover. Okay, so I'm pulling the records for this and looking through all my records, and I can't find my copy of Disraeli Gears. And I'm checking everywhere. Where did I put it? And I remembered what had happened to it. So let's go back to June of 1967, and November of 67, and I buy this record, and I'm playing it. And I was at NYU Film School at the time, and I told the guys in one of my classes, I think the class was called Physics for Poets. Don't ask. And I go over to their room at the dorm, which was, they were in the Brittany dorm. Now, the Brittany dorm was the men's dorm and had the atmosphere of the Casbah with tons of pot smoke, okay? There was colored lights everywhere. Music came from all the rooms. You got no studying done if you lived in the Brittany. So I'm hanging out in their room, and we're listening to this record, enjoying the, what did they call it at the time? The benefits of the new age. And we're smoking a lot of pot, and it comes time for me to get out of there and maybe do some homework or something. And I try to take this record with me, and they say, oh no, can you lend us the record? Can you lend us? I said, I know, if you lend these guys a record, it's gonna be gone. You're never gonna get it back. It's gonna get covered with candle wax or incense crap all over it. I mean, remember the time and the period. And I say, no, I'm gonna take it with me. And the guy whose room it is says, I'll make you a deal. You give us this record, and I'll give you 2 tabs of mescaline. Pretty good deal. So I took the mescaline with me and left the record, and that's why I don't have it today, and I've forgotten that. So I went on Amazon and just ordered it. Okay, the psychedelic look of this band. This is a wonderful book called Play It Loud, Instruments of Rock and Roll. It was an exhibit at the Met in New York City. That's where I got the hat. And it's the kind of exhibit that I was meant to go see. And here's what Cream looked like in those days. Pretty cool, huh? That was their look. And they were very, very influential because they were the first power trio. And that was a sound that really existed in the 60s. One of the reasons I responded to their music so much is I like loud guitars and I like guitar music. And the power trio, from them, they influenced the formation of power trios. For instance, Jimi Hendrix Experience, who at one time actually played Sunshine of Your Love because Eric Clapton was in the audience. Nirvana is a power trio, so are the Police. In metal, Motorhead, and sort of jazz rock, art rock, Rush, the James Gang, which brought us Joe Walsh, ZZ Top. That's a power trio that plays down blues. And the same thing with Cream. Cream took all these blues songs and adapted it, and they covered everything from Skip James to Howlin' Wolf. Now, Husker Du and Green Day were sort of more 70s or 80s punk versions of the power trio. Now, not every power trio was created equally, and if the Cream have to answer for anything in their career, Grand Funk Railroad, and maybe the worst of the power trios, Blue Cheer, who were loud and nothing else. Okay, the next big thing the Cream does is this record. Can you see it? It's not too reflective. This is Wheels of Fire. How great a name is that? Look at this, all right? This is the cover. This is when double albums, people put money into this stuff. You don't have any of this packaging anymore. This is great, okay? This went to #1, right? On the basis of a Robert Johnson song. Now, also on this record, you've got White Room, Sitting on Top of the World, which is a fantastic Howlin' Wolf song. And you have Spoonful, Crossroads, and a 15-minute version of Toad. Now, this is Eric Clapton and Cream out on tour, just wailing. And who knew that Robert Johnson would have a hit record? They cut this down. They made a single version of it. But this is the record that broke the band in the sense of they started whatever between the heroin and whether enmity existed between them. This is the record that broke them up. It's still produced by Felix Pappalardi, and it was engineered by Tom Dowd, and it's got live side and a studio side, but the band was at each other's throats, and it was kind of the end of them. And when they told the record company that they had it, well, you can imagine the record company said, "Oh, don't be so hasty." So the record company was begged them for their last record, and then they had them play at the. Here they are. They played in London and at the Albert Hall in November of '68. And so this is a good concert film. They play great. They play furiously. It's overcut, and the cameras don't move or anything. It's an early doc. What's really good in it is Eric Clapton does an interview where he's got the curly hair and then he talks about his guitars and the history of his guitars, and it's very effective that way. Also, there's a documentary that they made about them called Strange Brew, and their last record is actually not just like throw together all the outtakes. It's called Goodbye by Cream. And it's a very good record. It's not as good as some of the other ones, but it's got I'm So Glad on it, Politician, Sitting on Top of the World is on this as well, and this terrific song called Badge, which is unlike everything they ever did. That's the thing about all the Cream records. Nothing sounds alike. There's variation within all the songs, and a lot of that goes to Jack Bruce and Peter Brown. But Badge has a special guest on it. It has a rhythm guitar player called L'Angelo Misterioso, and he's on this record because Eric Clapton played on a record that L'Angelo Misterioso's band did. You may have heard of the album. It's called the White Album. The band is called the Beatles, and the song is My Guitar Gently Weeps. And L'Angelo Misterioso is Eric Clapton's best friend, and that would be George Harrison. And eventually Eric Clapton took George Harrison's wife away from him, and thus begat Layla. See, it's all interconnected here, and it was Goodbye to Cream. Okay, I think that's pretty apt. And if you want more of Cream from that era, they actually kept milking this puppy, and but it's actually really good stuff. This is all the outtakes didn't make it onto the other live recordings, and so there's lots of good stuff here. And it's a terrific version of Sleepy Time, Rollin' and Tumblin'. Here's Sunshine of Your Love, Politician. All kinds of good stuff here on this, as well as there's a CD called the Cream Live at the BBC that I have, which is all the way across the room, so I'm not going to get it. And that's them in their early days playing live. So they pretty much milked it and got all they could out of it. And then Eric Clapton decided he was going to get together with the organ player from the Powerhouse. Remember we were talking about that? And that would be Stevie Winwood. And out came this record and this group. Okay, this is Blind Faith. Pretty good record with a very unfortunate cover. So let's just turn that around in this day and age. Now the thing about it is it's got Can't Find My Way Home on it, which is one of Stevie Winwood's best songs, but inexplicably, I don't know why someone thought this was a good idea. Ginger Baker was the drummer on it, and Ginger Baker, I mean, everybody hates him, okay? there's a documentary about Ginger Baker called Beware of Mr. Baker, okay? Nobody in his life ever liked Ginger Baker, okay? I mean, I hate to say, speak ill of the dead, but he was a bastard. And it's borne out by this documentary, which was made in about 2012. In the very first scene of the documentary, he turns on the documentarian who's got the camera and he beats the shit out of him, and it goes on from there. I never saw anyone smoke more cigarettes than Ginger Baker. So he broke up this band as well. So everyone goes their separate ways, and Jack Bruce ends up doing a solo records, Songs for a Tailor, I think it's called, and he gets in a group called West Bruce and Lang, and Felix Pappalardi, who produced these records, ends up forming his own sort of power trio. Even though there's four of them, it's the sound of a power trio, and that's called Mountain. And they had some success with Mississippi Queen. Now, the rock and roll lifestyle led to Felix Pappalardi's unhappy end. Felix was shot to death by his wife, who claimed she thought he was an intruder in the house, and she didn't realize it was him. Now, the police questioned this of Gail Pappalardi because Felix was shot in bed. So how did he get all the way to the bed and shot? And then, you know, hate to be very rock and roll Babylon about this, but it came out that Felix had some women on the side. Gail found out, and she put a gun under a pillow and took this opportunity to end Felix's life. Okay, now, all right. Thank you, Felix Pappalardi, and his other work includes a terrific band called the Youngbloods. I like very much. This is what Eric came up with Tom Dowd. Layla. I've got 5 versions of this. This is the box set with all the possible outtakes that any human being could want on this, and it's, of course, one of the classic guitar records of all time. And then the next record that he did with Tom Dowd is Eric Clapton and 460 Ocean Boulevard. This is another great commercial sounding but really good Eric Clapton record. I'm not here to do a whole history of Eric Clapton, but I can't really resist, okay? Later on in his career, after his son died, he went and recorded this album, and he wrote the song that was one of his huge hits, okay? It is, I'm sorry, Tears in Heaven, okay? And this is his unplugged record, as well as the DVD of his MTV concert, and that guitar that Eric Clapton is playing is a 1939, anyway, I forgot the name of the company right now. Martin, a 1939 Martin. And Martin has said that is the Stradivarius of their guitars, that the wood, the making of it, everything is perfect in the 1939 models. And the greatest guitar player has the greatest guitar on this record, and he does a wonderful job playing the blues on it, as well as Tears in Heaven, and that was another hit he had. He did a tribute to Robert Johnson, which is also a DVD as well as a CD, and it's all great blues players, and he does nothing but Robert Johnson songs because Robert Johnson is his idol, and there's Robert looking over our shoulder there. And for really some interesting stuff that you would not expect, Wynton Marsalis and Eric Clapton together on this. All right, let me get the reflection out of there. Okay, there they are. It's called Play the Blues, and it's with the Lincoln Center Orchestra, and they cover blues numbers and some of Eric Clapton's music and some of Wynton Marsalis' music, and it's a wonderful sound and a terrific recording and really fun to watch. So, Clapton had a career. Jack Bruce let the drugs get the better of him, and throughout the 80s, he basically did not have a career because of heroin use. And Ginger Baker moved to Australia. He also went to Africa and played with Fela Kuti, who is a great African jazz artist, very political. In fact, Kuti was so political that the government had him assassinated. So Ginger still pursued drum projects and a little bit of a career of acting, but he basically lived in Australia alone. And Jack Bruce developed, after he kicked the heroin habit, and so did Ginger Baker, Jack Bruce developed liver cancer and had a liver transplant. And Ginger Baker, they were all separate, and then somehow or other, they decided to get together again, okay? And in 2005, they got together because I guess, Eric had money, but the other two guys were not, and they did a tour. And this is the music from it, okay? It's at the Royal Albert Hall. This is a live recording and a Blu-ray, and it's really wonderful. It's really the point of this whole tribute that I'm giving you all is this, okay? When they were young, they were hotshots who ended up hating each other and eating themselves alive. 40 years later, they get together, and you know what? The magic's still there, okay? And as you watch them play together, it's like a drama without words, without dialogue, because you can see the interplay of three musicians who know that when they have something special, that when they get on the stage and play this song, like Sleepy Time Time, in the middle of it, you see them look at each other and they go, man, we were the shit, okay? On this record is Spoonful, I'm So Glad, Sleepy Time, Badge is on this, Politician, Born Under a Bad Sign, Crossroads, and of course they finish with Sunshine of Your Love. So, as Eric plays this guitar solo, I think we wish Sleepy Time Time to Jack Bruce and Ginger Baker. And Eric is still with us playing, and I will buy every record he ever makes. And thank you for all the wonderful sound and the psychodrama that went with it. But to watch them play together one last time, it's worth it, okay? Thank you, everybody. Love this song.